Multiple Republican politicians had a bit of a bad weekend in the form of uncomfortable Sunday morning interviews, including on the Fox propaganda network. And since we enjoy watching Republicans squirm here, we've got to talk about it. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, it was some sort of statistical anomaly or some sort of event which happened here. The stars were aligned in such a way because we're talking about Republican Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican Senator J.D. Vance, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, and Republican Congressman Jim Jordan within the span of 2 hours of one another on a number of networks, CBS, CNN, and yes, even Fox News, have a number of uncomfortable interactions with members of the media in these interviews. And so we got to talk about this because it was like a Schadenfreude marathon for the GOP. We're going to start with Jim Jordan, the Republican congressperson who is helped leading the witch hunt, the failed sham impeachment inquiry against President Biden. He gets raked over the coals by Fox commentator Maria Bartiromo, who is just fed up with his failure. Watch him squirm on live TV.
Look, I mean, at this point, American citizens are asking, what can you do about it? I mean, look, with all due respect, people are sick and tired of congressional investigations that go nowhere. People are sick and tired of letters being written and sent to the people who we know are bad in the first place. They want you to do something about it. You're an elected official. What can you do to right these wrongs?
Well, we've passed legislation out of the committee that would help remedy this situation, particularly the one in New York. But the president or vice president can move a case to federal court from when you do these state prosecutors who are going after someone for a political reason. So we're a legislative branch. We can't put anyone in jail. And I don't think the Biden administration, their DOJ is going to go after the people who need to go after. You're just not going to get that from Merrick Garland. I mean, I asked the question a couple weeks ago. We don't know from the Biden administration who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th, who leaked the Dobbs draft opinion, the one that led to an assassination attempt on Justice Kavanaugh, who put cocaine in the White House. We don't seem to get the answers to those questions. But, you can have someone from the Biden Justice Department like Jack Smith go after President Trump. You can have the DOJ say we're going to investigate parents who show up at school board meetings. You can have the Richmond FBI say, if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist. So they got time for all that, but they can't answer some fundamental questions that I think the American people would like to get answers to.
Well,
our job is to get the facts out there and to look at legislation. We can't prosecute anyone, only the DOJ can. And frankly, the Biden DOJ is just not going to do it.
Yeah, you can tell Maria Bartiromo is not satisfied. Of course, she's complaining about, righting these wrongs which don't exist and were fed to her by Jim Jordan in the first place. So this is Jim Jordan on live TV being hoisted by his own petard. Why have you not solved these imaginary problems that you say are so existential? And you can tell, he's talking about cocaine in the White House, which was investigated by Secret Service. But to him, that's infinitely more important than Donald Trump trying to steal a free and fair election, engage in election interference, which is what's going on in the trial. The trial is litigating in Manhattan whether or not Donald Trump engaged in election interference in 2016 when he used campaign finance funds to basically hush up a story and catch and kill delegitimizing stories about him during his campaign against Hillary Clinton. But what I really find funny about this is because that Jim Jordan doesn't want to address the failed sham Biden impeachment inquiry, which is what Maria Bartiromo directly referenced when she referred to investigations which go nowhere. And instead, he's like, we're legislators. We can't arrest people. We have to legislate. As we've discussed in previous videos, Jim Jordan is literally the least effective Republican congressman, period. He's been in Congress for years and years and years. He has passed no laws, co-sponsored very few. And when asked about it, like, hey, what are you doing here by earning a taxpayer's salary or salary from taxpayers? And he's like, my job isn't to pass laws. Now, of course, he's appealing to just that while not doing it at all. So I also want to play some clips here. One is from Mitch McConnell had two back-to-back interviews on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan and also NBC with Kristen Welker. We're going to play a clip with Margaret Brennan here in which McConnell's kind of put on the spot about, what he's going to do if Donald Trump wins the presidency, given that Trump and McConnell seem to be at odds on a number of issues.
Since the past few months have passed, in our last conversation, you've endorsed him for re-election.
You need to get better research. I was asked that question 3 years ago if he were the nominee, would I support him?
And you said you would support
And
whoever
I
the
said
nominee
yes,
was.
because the voters of my party across the country have made a decision. As the Republican leader of the Senate, obviously I'm going to support the nominee of our party.
But you have taken stands on issues you feel are of strong national security interest and morally imperative. That was your argument on Ukraine. And that you were bucking, in some ways, a populist opinion. So on this one, I'm just wondering how you explain that when you say it was good enough for a number of Republicans that he be the nominee. Because that is the populist opinion. It's not taking the position that he has, he doesn't live up to the role.
The issue is, what kind of influence, even if I'd chosen to get involved in the presidential election, what kind of influence would I have had?
You're one of the most powerful Republicans.
I'm the Republican leader of the Senate. What we do here is try to make law. I like us to be in the majority.
Your worldview seems more aligned with Joe Biden when it comes to American leadership in these global conflicts than with Donald Trump,
I certainly
who has
wouldn't
spoken against Volodymyr Zelensky, who has not endorsed the package that you just worked so hard to get over the finish line.
Look, I wouldn't have withdrawn from Afghanistan. I wouldn't have submitted 4 budgets in a row for defense that don't even keep up with inflation. I got plenty of differences with the current administration. Whether I will have differences with the next administration remains to be seen. I know what I think, and it doesn't make any difference what the outcome of the presidential election is. I'm going to be focusing on this for the remainder of my time in the Senate.
So McConnell said in that interview that his focus for his remaining time in office is going to be fighting this sense of isolationism within the Republican Party. But here, then he says something completely contradictory, which is the outcome of the presidential election is irrelevant. Well, not if the guy who wins becomes president and the guy who wins is an isolationist, which is Donald Trump, the man you endorse, who opposes you. What you just said was your stated mission for the remainder of your career. This is the problem. And this is what Margaret Brennan was getting at. And this is why Mitch McConnell, even though I don't think he was particularly worked up, why he struggled to answer coherently and why he stammered so much is because he knows it's all counterintuitive. McConnell is a partisan hack. McConnell puts short-term political gain over the benefit of the country, or arguably even the long-term health of his own party, just for short-term moves. I mean, he's brilliant in his own way, but it's always 1 or 2 moves ahead. It's not about where the Republican Party will be in 5 or 10 years, except for when it comes to the judiciary, but that's a secondary thing. He's put himself in a position by just reflexively backing whoever wins the Republican nomination, even if it's somebody like Trump, that Trump is almost certainly going to oppose everything that McConnell wants to do in terms of McConnell's stated public mission. Donald Trump has no interest in helping Ukraine. Donald Trump has many interests in, making as many concessions to Putin and Russia as possible. So it's fascinating, but it goes to show why he struggled to answer that question, because he's Dr. Frankenstein. Mitch McConnell helped create the very problem, which is undermining his life's mission now. J.D. Vance, another Republican senator, was basically forced to contend with his hypocrisy with respect to Trump because he used to be a strident critic of Donald Trump. And now, of course, like many former strident critics of Donald Trump, he is a devout Trump acolyte. And he got called out on it on the Fox Propaganda Network. You let me know if you think this is satisfying.
I want to ask you about a New York Times piece, lengthy piece on you yesterday. Talked about your relationship to the Trumps. They talk about your evolution from calling him loathsome and an idiot to somebody who, frankly, is being floated as a VP pick to join his ticket. Here's a sample of that piece. David Frum, a Trump critic and a former speechwriter for President George W. Bush, who's known Vance for years, described the senator as an intelligent man with an extraordinary life story who has, quote, sunk to the depths of political degradation. Washington Post says you're going to the same negative place that you once criticized Trump for going. Now, he's not changed over the last few years. He's the same guy we've been knowing for a long time. So what's changed with you that you're okay with the behavior and you're supporting him and maybe joining his ticket?
Well, Shana, look, the simple fact is the policies and the results were really there. We had low inflation, we had rising wages, and we had a world that wasn't on fire. And now, after 3 years of Joe Biden, we have rising inflation, a stagnating economy, and it seems like a crisis in every single sector of the world. If you can't look at the 4-year accomplishment of Donald Trump and say, from the perspective of 2015, I was wrong. I didn't think he would be a good president. He was a great president. That's not about, sinking to political degradation. That's looking at reality and recognizing that Donald Trump was a success.
So here's the thing. J.D. Vance, again, he's not stupid. He's a very slick operator, but he is forced to lie in order to justify his heel turn on Trump. And then, of course, he does what most other Republicans do, which is pretend 2020 didn't happen. So as a reminder, Donald Trump inherited a good economy from Barack Obama. And to the extent that Donald Trump experienced any sort of major economic successes, they were mere continuations of Obama-era trends, with very few exceptions. And then in Donald Trump's 4th year in office, the economy collapsed on his watch due in large part to his mismanagement of COVID. That's on Donald Trump. And J.D. Vance nor any other Republican would be inclined to grade the Democrat on a curve if it had been a Democrat instead of Trump. So we're not going to do the same thing because, again, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? So he has to lie about the economy. The United States economy is by far the envy of the world right now. It's not to say there aren't legitimate hardships going on, but to the extent that the same macroeconomic indicators that J.D. Vance evaluated when Trump was president from 2017 to 2019, because again, they want to cut out 2020, those macroeconomic indicators are phenomenal under President Biden. Unemployment is lower under President Biden than it ever was under Trump. Unemployment for minorities and marginalized groups better under Biden than it was under Trump. Inflation has cooled off. It's a global phenomenon. I don't know why we're blaming Biden for it. And had Trump managed COVID better, we would not have had to deal very likely with inflation because there wouldn't have been, COVID era consequences, right? Like supply chain shortages or the spending, the stimulus packages. Trump passed 2, Biden passed 1. So to the extent that stimulus is what caused inflation, that's the Republican claim. Well, Donald Trump contributed to that as well. Donald Trump added $8 trillion to the debt after promising to wipe it out, blah, 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 blah. The fact of the matter is GDP growth, again, greater under Biden than Trump. Biden's economy is better. And we can actually point to things that Biden has done to make the economy better. Whereas the best thing you can say about Trump, if you, again, cut off 2020, which I'm not, and again, nor should you, is that he merely continued trends left for him by President Obama. So again, J.D. Vance has to lie about it. But good on Shannon Bream for pointing it out. Like, hey, Trump hasn't changed. Trump's an idiot. You said he was an idiot. Trump's still an idiot. So what changed? Well, and then, of course, he lies. Lindsey Graham also squirmed on Sunday, same day, just back to back to back. These politicians, these Republicans, all squirming on various networks. This time on CNN about Trump's various legal challenges. And again, Lindsey Graham postures himself as a law and order principled conservative Republican. Let's see if he follows through with that.
Your poll tells me everything I need to know about these legal problems of Trump. People are looking at their problems, not Trump's legal problems.
You mentioned the case in New York. Of course, that is something that is ongoing. And I just do want to ask you one specific question about what we heard this past week. And that is David Pecker, who ran the National Enquirer's parent company, testified that he paid to catch and kill stories about Trump, specifically to help his presidential campaign. You don't have any concerns about that?
Apparently a lot of people do this. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tiger Woods. No, I think the whole thing is a crock. The statute of limitations has long shut out the misdemeanor cases. So this liberal prosecutor in Manhattan came up with a federal campaign violation that the state of New York, the Southern District of New York looked at, the Federal Election Commission looked at, Jack Smith looked at, and decided not to prosecute. Alvin Bragg took a case that was rejected by the federal government to resurrect these misdemeanors. I think it's a political hit job on Trump 6 months before the election. That's what I think.
All right. Obviously, Tiger Woods is not running for president, and the allegation is about, at least not yet.
No, I got campaign. It. I think the whole thing's BS. Okay. Yeah, I think it's all BS. Yeah, political BS.
And just
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Just to underscore something you said earlier, if he is convicted, you will still support him and vote for him.
Absolutely. I think what's going on with Donald Trump is weaponization of the law. He's being prosecuted in Manhattan, one of the deepest blue cities in the country, Georgia and Fulton County. Jack Smith is going after Trump, but Clinton and, Biden. Anyway, I think most people have written this off. They're going to focus on their problems, not a bunch of cases brought by liberals against Trump.
So I don't know where he's getting that from. Poll after poll after poll shows that independents and even some moderate conservatives say that a conviction for Trump means that they're not going to vote for him. So a conviction in any of these cases will doom his presidency, at least according to the polls, which that may change, right? Or people may have lied, but based on the evidence we have, what Lindsey Graham said is not true. Again, also fascinating stuff that law and order, law and order, law and order. We believe in law and order. Damn it, they want to take voting rights away from felons, and if you get busted with marijuana, you're persona non grata. I mean, these are dyed in the wool, law and order Republicans. Except when it comes to Donald Trump, and then as he famously prophesied years ago, he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose a single vote. He was apparently prophesying how Lindsey Graham would react, which is that law and order again is for lesser people. Law and order is for people like us, right? We have to obey the law. We have to comply with order. The criminal justice system is perfectly fine when it's against Democrats, when it's against liberals, progressives, black people, women, marginalized groups, anything like that. Law and order in the system can be trusted then, and then it should be, it should be ratcheted up to the most punitive iteration possible. Except when it comes to Donald Trump, and then the whole thing is rigged and law and order is like just kind of superfluous, and who cares? We don't need it. Evidence, jury of your peers, judges, appeals, none of that matters because it's Trump. And so they don't hold Trump to the same standard that they try to impose on the rest of us, which just goes to show the weakness of their position. Anyway, terrible Sunday for Republicans across the board. I love that all these Republicans had back-to-back rough encounters, and they squirmed. They struggled to answer questions. Let me know what you think in the comments.